Okay, we are back, and I want to show you something in terms of these videos. This is how I save them, and I want to explain something to you in case you haven't been able to, decipher which ones you're supposed to be doing for any given lecture when you're pulling them from YouTube, because they don't go up necessarily in order. So 14 would be the 14th lecture that I've done. This is on Socialization, Chapter 3, which is the title and the chapter number, Video 2. So you'll see Video 3, Video 4. So you'll see 15, Socialization, Chapter 3, Video 3, 16, Socialization, Chapter 3, Video 4, and so on and so forth. So I'm hoping that helps a little bit. So let's talk about Jean Piaget now. He goes over these sensory motor stages, and they're pretty straightforward, but they go from very concrete to an abstract. So since the first sensory motor stage, according to Jean Piaget, is understanding of the environment, and it's limited to direct physical contacts. So infants don't understand cause and effect. They don't understand your body is separate from their environment or the environment, and they can't think logically. So this goes back to what we were describing with George Herbert Mead's description of how babies are. They're very similar, if you notice. Babies are very tactile. They don't understand their body is going to be necessarily separate from the environment, because they're understanding the world around them and coming to understand themselves, their sense of self, through the environment. So one personal example that I like to use for this is with my son. When he was a baby, I would take him to the beach. My youngest son, his name is Dax. He's 16 now. I've always been a beach lover. I love being at the beach. So I would take him to the beach, and he at first didn't want to get in the sand at all. He doesn't like getting dirty, doesn't like ketchup, doesn't like getting cake on his face. He never liked getting dirty. So he sat on the beach towel almost the entire time. And I think it was like the second or third time that I took him that all of a sudden he was, he would stick one finger into the sand, and that was it. And then try to wipe it off, or ask me to cry, ask me to wipe it off. And all of a sudden, he grabs a fistful of sand, and before I could catch him, he has that sand in his mouth. He never shut his mouth. He started, as soon as that sand hit his tongue, he started crying. So he was trying to understand the concept of sand, the environment around him, through something that babies often do, which is to put things in his mouth. And didn't understand that there would be a cause and effect of, if I don't like the way this feels on my fingers, I'm not going to like the way this feels on my hands. So that's that very much, understanding the environment is limited to that direct physical contact, which is what he was doing, and that he didn't realize there was cause and effect, and didn't realize that other environment could cause his body discomfort in that way, right? The second stage is the pre-operational stage, ages 2 to 7. So you can, at that stage you can count, but you don't understand numbers. You can't take the role of the other. We already kind of talked about that, right? 2-year-olds don't really understand your perspective. They don't know what's going to make you feel better. They'll bring you their favorite toy. You're developing your ability to use symbols, and you're beginning to learn concepts like speed, size, causation, right? So the counting part. So this is another personal example. I was about 5 years old in kindergarten, and the teacher decided it would be fun and, to let us go outside and write our numbers with crayons as high as we could write. Now, at about 5 years old, 95% of the population of that age can count to 10. About 5% can count to 100. It's extremely rare for a child to be able to count any higher than that. And it's especially rare for children to understand that numbers continue on into infinity. So she gives everybody crayons and tells them they can sit outside and write their numbers. Everybody jumps up, all excited with their crayons, and runs outside, laughing and smiling. And I immediately start crying. And I try to explain to the teacher that I was sorry and I don't want to go outside forever. And she just didn't understand me, and she asked me to just, it's okay, just go outside and write your numbers as high as you can. So finally I go outside with the other kids and my crayons, and I remember this very clearly. I remember the wood bench they were sitting on. I remember the playground because I was fairly traumatized by this event. Most of the kids, I think, wrote to 10 and went back inside. One other kid wrote all the way up to 100. And, and then he went back inside, and I stayed outside crying and writing numbers for I don't know how long. And finally, the teacher came outside and let me in. So what had happened? What had happened was that the teacher understood something that was fairly common. Children can write to about a 10, and a few can write to 100. It's extremely rare that a kid understands that the numbers continue on into infinity, and it was something I had understood at that age. I was very interested in numbers and the continuation of numbers and these concepts of space and numbers. And I had tried to write as high as I could before this event. And what she didn't realize was, when I was trying to explain to her, is that in my mind, she had sent me outside forever to keep writing numbers, and I was never going to come inside, and that's why I was so upset. So, and we'll come back to this in a minute because it's actually very important, this abstract concept of numbers. It's very rare to be at 2 to 7 and be in the formal operational stage, which is apparently what had happened. So you can't take on the role of the other. And we've already kind of talked about that in terms of, you see like a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, they can't see something from someone else's perspective. Occasionally you also see this with adults, and that's because they're still in this pre-operational stage. So it makes it very challenging for them to take on the role of even the individual other. So you are able to develop your ability to use symbols. Now, sometimes you'll see a little kid, especially really young, they'll shake their head no, and they mean yes, or they'll shake their head yes, and they mean no. So they're still, that's kind of an obvious symbol. Those are symbols for us, but we're still developing them at that age. You're beginning to learn concepts like speed, size, causation, which is important too, and that's why you see at that age, that's what we're focusing on in the school systems. By the next stage, you're talking, 7, 8 years old to about 12 or 13 is the concrete operational stage. So at this point, children understand causation, numbers, and speed. They may not completely understand that numbers go on into infinity. You might be able to say that. You might be able to say, oh, well, numbers go on till infinity. But trying to actually understand that concept is different than being able to, say what you've heard other people say. Your reasoning abilities tend to be very concrete, so you have to see the information. You can't delve deeper into it, and abstract concepts are not understood without concrete examples. So one of the reasons why in school, high school, grade school, college, you see that a teacher will give you a definition, give you a word or a concept, give you a definition, and then give you an example. And the reason why they're doing this is because a good portion of the society, most people actually, about 80%, according to some research, they're still in the concrete operational stage. Now, they do not understand abstract concepts like the theories we went over without concrete examples. That's one of the reasons why sociological theory is very challenging for people, or advanced mathematics. Once you get beyond the concrete mathematics into the abstract mathematics, that doesn't make sense for people, and it's very challenging. A good example of that is the number I, which is an imaginary number. And it's used in calculations all the time. It's actually used to land planes, and to make sure that when you're flying, planes don't accidentally crash into each other. And it's not a real number. It's an imaginary number, and it's used in a formula all the time. And this is a very abstract concept, right? So these numbers, some people, they'll do math and they'll hit that abstract level and they hit a wall. While other people, they're doing math and then they hit that abstract level and it's like they went from jogging to running. Now they're in a full stride and they truly understand it. So if you think about another concept like honesty, which is an abstract concept, most of us learn honesty very young, but we're learning it through concrete examples of what being honest is or what it is not. So you're learning it through concrete examples, although it's an abstract concept. At about puberty, supposedly, you're supposed to hit the formal operational stage. And the formal operational stage is abstract thinking is possible, and conclusions can be made about abstract concepts based on formal rules. So that's the theories. That's all of the theories in sociology. That is a lot of different things that we use in society that people don't necessarily understand. When somebody says philosophy's not useful, it's usually because they don't have the ability to understand these abstract concepts without concrete examples, and therefore they dismiss it for not real knowledge or not valid knowledge. So you have 5-year-olds that can do it, and you have PhDs that can't. It's not necessarily linked to our modern concept of IQ. It's aside from that. It's a different type of intelligence and a different level of type of thinking. So from the sensory motor stage, pre-operational stage, concrete operational stage, and formal operational stage, I highly recommend that you create an example for each one of these stages and write them down, keep them in your notes. They will be helpful to you, and you're checking in to make sure that you understood that. Let's go back quickly because I skipped something. The I and the me. So knowing what you know now, the I, as George Herbert Mead is talking about it, he calls it the self as the subject, and the me is the self as the object. So when we see the me is going to understand itself from the generalized other and the significant other. The I is that internal self that understands the me and will take into account the me, but can still make different choices. So think about it this way. The me knows that I should not steal. The I will steal anyways. Steal. It's probably sounds weird as I'm talking on the video, the word steal. The me knows I shouldn't cheat. The I cheats anyways, right? The me knows that people look down upon cheating, right? The me remembers and feels bad about, or remembers the I cheating. The I has a sense of guilt about cheating. The me also understands that I should feel guilty about cheating. So it's a little bit complicated. No worries, it's not on the test, the difference between I and me, but you should know it.